there was more traffic today because everyone's going back to school. I can't believe all that traffic is associated with back to school, but my commute was almost twice as long this morning. I'm joined by Councilmember Bill Rosendahl. I understand Councilmember Tom Abange is in the building, and we expect him any moment. But why don't we get going, and let's start with item 1.
Under item 1, the Chief Legislative Analyst and Convention Center Department General Manager submit for approval a joint report recommending various council actions regarding the control of signage rights for the exterior of the Los Angeles Convention Center.
Good morning. Jerry Miller, Chief Legislative Analyst.
Good morning.
This item has been actually going on for some time. It was initially proposed by AEG as part of the 07-08 budget. We have been in negotiations with them. In essence, what this relates to is signage on the Los Angeles Convention Center. Now, what's before you today is not the approval of the signs, it's the approval of the business deal itself. The signs themselves are going through a separate track through the planning department. They will have the hearings and go through the commission and then come to the council through that normal track. So what you have before you is a substantially better deal than was proposed. They're going to guarantee us $2 million a year that will be inflated.
Who's them?
AEG. And that would be inflated by 3% annually. In addition to that, we've negotiated a substantial portion of the signage where we would share revenues on top of the guarantee. The revenues from that are unknown at this time, but it would be, again, on top of the $2 million guarantee. So just in the guarantee alone, it's a $2 million better deal to the city in present value terms than was proposed over 10 years, $6 million over 20. Now, at the end of 10 years, the city will have the option. They're going to reserve certain signs to back the $2 million guarantee that they will sell to their district sponsors. And the city, at the end of 10 years, will have the option of foregoing the $2 million guarantee and having virtually all of the signs be part of the revenue share. So we'll get to see what the numbers look like in the first 10 years, and at that point, the city can decide, okay, we'll give up on the guarantee. We want the revenue sharing from the additional signs. So what you have before you is a total of a 30-year agreement, 10 years with two 10-year extensions. In a nutshell, that is what's before you. Now, the issue of competitive bidding, I know, has come up. Excuse me, in the original Staples deal, really 12 years ago, both the city and the developer, this was pre-AEG actually, both agreed not to do any commercial signage on the convention center with the exception of the 2 pylon signs that are there now. So in essence, there are no signage rights for anybody at the convention center, and it's part of the agreement. So we really can't competitively bid this. I've submitted to the clerk some language for a specific finding that it's not feasible to competitively bid the signage here. In essence, that's an overview of the report. And
is that the findings that we were supposed to make?
Yes, in
on,
essence, findings.
The competitive bidding. So
right.
That's the finding.
Charter Section 37(1)(c)(10) and 372. It's findings that it's not feasible or in the city's interest to competitively bid this. In essence, we can't because we've had the agreement with the original Staples deal. Okay,
so besides that, basically, you're telling us that this is a good deal.
It is a good deal.
And it is a better deal than what was before us previously.
It is a
And again, explain to me how that this revenue is generated, is shared between the city and the LA Arena Land Company?
Sure. They will have, there are certain signs that they're going to sell to their district sponsors. They will keep.
What does that mean?
It means whether it's a soft drink company, whether it's an auto company, sponsors within the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment District.
Okay.
Revenues from those signs will back the guarantee to the city. There are additional signs that are not part of that subset that backs the guarantee. Those revenues would be shared. The first $5 million, and again, AEG would be paying all of the costs of installation. They'd be paying all of the costs of maintenance. The city would actually have no capital costs whatsoever in terms of building the signs and the maintenance. So on the revenue share sign, the first $5 million is 25 city, 75 AEG. The second 5 is 50-50. And then over that, it's 75 city, 25 AEG.
And where will the public see these signs? I mean, where will they be?
They will be on the South Hall, on the Bond Street or Cherry Street Garage, on the West Hall. There will be a lot of signs. Now, this is not something that would work in many areas of the city. Hollywood is the only other that comes to mind. But it is consistent with the district and what's happened down there. The council office is here and supportive of it. And of course, Perea can address the convention center's view.
Okay, and just one more thing, and I think my colleagues probably will have some questions. I know it's not before us today in terms of the guidelines on, which advertisers we're agreeing to, but is there guidelines or whose responsibility is it to vet potential advertisers?
Well, through the agreement, they no alcohol with the exception of beer, no adult entertainment, no tobacco, firearms. They're the standard restrictions on signage.
And
Gentlemen's clubs.
That would be adult-oriented business. That would not be permitted.
Okay, good thing. I want to make sure.
not all gentlemen are adults, but but there. So we already have guidelines in place for any advertising within the city of Los Angeles.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to go before another group or the commission or.
No, again, the signage entitlements, and then I'll let Mr. Abbasi,
Okay.
the contact will be with him. Signage entitlements themselves are coming through planning, and we'll come back to the council.
Okay.
Yes, we are going to go through planning department and go through the right procedures. One of the things I wanted to augment what Jerry
Name for
pointed.
the record.
Puriya Abbasi, General Manager, CEO of Los Angeles Convention Center. One of the items that I just wanted to mention to augment what Jerry said was there's a set of signs. There are static signs and there are dynamic signs, programmable signs. On the programmable signs, what this negotiation has done has given priority to the advertising of convention center events at the convention center on those dynamic signs, and then Nokia events and Staples Center events. And then whatever time and space is left, then we would be going to third-party advertisers. So again, the rights of the convention center to let the public know what is going on at the convention center, what events are going on, has been secured through the signage agreement.
Okay.
Just a few questions. I appreciate your leadership. You've been great. The group has been in place for how long before we renegotiated this relationship?
What group?
The group that you have the program with right now.
Currently, actually, we do it ourselves. We don't have outside advertising
Right.
currently. We just have banners that we put on the convention center. The only thing we have are exterior signs on the perimeters of the convention center that just say, for example, auto shows here from this.
And how did we get this particular group involved as a sole
Well,
source?
sir.
again, that goes back to the original agreement when the Staples Arena was negotiated. If you will notice, there is no commercial signage on the outside of Staples Center.
Right.
And there's no commercial signage at the convention center.
Right.
The signage was very important, a very important issue in those initial negotiations. I was there, and it took us months to talk about signage. And in essence, both sides agreed we wouldn't do any commercial signage. We'd get the arena built, get the hotel started, get the development started, and come back and then talk about a fair deal relative to the signage. So the reason these people are involved is the original agreement with them, in essence, said neither of us could do signage without the other's consent.
Okay, fair enough. Second question is why 10 years, 10 years, 10 years? Why not 5 years and then take a look at the revenue stream and then another 5 years, giving us more flexibility? 10 years is a long time.
Well, that goes to the guarantee and to the packages that are sold to the district sponsors. Those are sold essentially in 10-year increments. Now, initially, I will tell you that the developers did not want to share that revenue from those signs at all. And you know, they're here. They can tell you there were some pretty tough negotiations, and in essence, they said, yes, after 10 years, those are the packages we're going to sell to the sponsors. So after 10 years, yes, we will give the city the option of adding virtually all of those signs to the revenue share.
Fair enough about maybe the first 10, but why not the second 10 be 5 years, 5 years? And I want more flexibility, more input, more ability from the city to see the revenue streams and to see how we can maximize for the city, you know, our revenue stream.
Well, again, I think, and then the second, once they're coming up for renewal,
We can go back.
then I think they need to know how long are they selling these signs for, and what's the revenue coming. So we have the option to say we're going to keep the guarantee, or we're going to add them all to the revenue sharing. And if things are going very, very well, and there's no question that we're going to get more than the $2 million by adding all of the signs to the revenue sharing, that's the city's option.
So you feel more comfortable that as we get closer to the first 10 years, like 8 years into it, we would start negotiating, looking at the numbers, looking at where it's heading, and seeing how much more flexibility we can get on our end. Would that give us an option to be stronger with them? In
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank
Mr.
you
Vaughn.
very much. A question, there's revenue that is there, it's not there now, right?
That's true. There is.
Right.
And where's the revenue go once you get the revenue? And it's guaranteed $2 million a year?
It is general fund. It will be general fund. All of it will be general fund. I've been talking to Mr. Abbasi about how to perhaps capture the revenue share on top of the guarantee for a capital program at the convention center, because a lot of work needs to be done at the West Hall, and there's some deferred capital maintenance.
Right.
But that'll ultimately be up to the council. It's general fund revenue.
Right. I'm somewhat familiar with these districts, and I see that the arena has similar signs that they promoted, so I question, why aren't we having similar signs? I know we are not Orange County, and we're not Irvine, and we're not a planned community. We're a dynamic community, so I can understand this, although some of the constituents I represent are not hep on signs in that sense of things. I just like to see, and I don't know what's your favorite number between 1 and 25?
3.
3. What's yours, Bill?
Oh, I don't know.
Mine's 22, so.
What's your point here? Where are you
Point
going
is,
with
I
this?
want to say, if you have no
Counsel.
revenue now, here's what I want. It's a friendly amendment. No revenue now. I want 22% of whatever you make there to go to the arts for the city of Los Angeles, citywide. If it's art up on there, what your graphics and design is, that it goes to the arts. If we're getting revenue and it's a new field we're farming, right?
Yes?
And so with the new field, let's be able to grow crops that people could be nourished by in the arts. So I don't know if 22 is a right number or 3 is a right number. You know why I picked 22?
Tell us.
Mike Haynes' number. He played with the Raiders. Okay, that's all right. Okay. So it's an artist. He is. It's a beautiful mural of him at our high school. What do you think about that, Jerry? See, that's a
That would be
decision
up
of
to
the
the, I mean,
council.
that's obviously up to the council.
entirely up to the council.
It's because this
Yeah.
goes into general fund.
It goes into general fund.
Right.
That's something,
Well, yeah, but if we're farming a new field, and we're guaranteed $2 million, and it may go up, that's $2 million we don't have. So what's 22%? What's
Well-
22%? Let's just say that's a big number,
To be
right?
That's
clear,
a
the
big number.
$2 million is in this year's budget for the first year.
Okay, I'll skip the first year, go to the second year. I'll be fair, I'm just saying, if we don't fight for the arts and step up for the arts, this is tourism committee, and tourism is a big part of the community. The opportunity for those would be there. So between now and this comes to council, I'm going to come up with a number.
Okay.
Under 22.
all right.
Okay, and see what we
Okay.
could do and get what the figures are, because it's a full field, right?
That's true, but as you're contemplating coming up with that number and
Right.
looking at the allocation and appropriations, one of the things I ask you to also look at, and one of the things that came before council when we were going through budget and finance, if there was going to be any distribution of funds, one of the areas that would be of priority, as Jerry pointed out, would be actually the deferred maintenance and construction of convention center.
100%.
I think in that medley of various needs, I think we need to look at everything. And one of the reasons that, although Jerry twisted my arm on this, one of the reasons was that we were very cognizant of the budgetary issues of the city and looked at this as, an augmentation of the budget. So again, the distribution of it ultimately would be before council, and you
Right.
would be making those decisions.
Right. mean,
But I think we
those are
should think of the
decisions.
arts. I understand that. Let me ask you a question. How much solar energy pulls off those panels that are there? And what percentage of your use at the convention?
It's really about 10%.
10%. They are operational right now. So, anyway, this is what I would think we should do. So let's kick it around. Anybody in this
Okay.
room has an idea? Let me know.
All right.
And
Let's
I think we
support.
should fight for the arts because it's a
Okay.
new field that we haven't entertained, and this is how you could get something for the arts. Thank you.
Okay, one more question.
Jerry, why doesn't this come before Budget Committee as well, since it's a revenue stream and it's a business deal, and we're talking 10 years and these kind of things? Why is it just going from us to the full council?
Well, actually, when the report came over, the clerk only referred it to this committee. I spoke to Mr. Parks, and of course, he's very familiar with this because it was part of the budget discussions,
right.
as you well know.
Right.
So he was comfortable with not hearing it in his committee.
Okay, because I am, as you know, a member of the Budget Committee.
Yes.
I think Tom's got a creative idea. I don't really want to comment on that, but we do need to fund the arts more, but I know we have a general revenue shortfall. My
All right.
biggest issue, of course, is the timing. 10 years is 10 years, and it's too much as far as I'm concerned. I'd like you to visit back again if you can do a 5-year. And if you can't, you explain why it has to be 10. And then I just want the city to have more flexibility as the revenue streams come in and have more access to that for the general fund. And Tom's point about arts, we have to really talk that out, Tom, to do a motion and put it before the committees and start a real discussion on
Well,
it.
no, we're right here. I want to get you before you get approval. Now's the time. I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm going to try to get it before we.
Very good.
Before we do it on the council,
Yeah.
did you want to speak one more time to the 10-year agreement?
Well, we'll speak with AEG, revisit the issue of, beyond the first 10 years, whether there can be shorter time frame.
Okay. Before we make a motion on this item, we've got two speakers. We have Councilwoman Perry's office here, Greg Fisher, and then Arnold Sachs.
Good morning, council members. Greg Fisher with the Office of Councilwoman Jan Perry. The councilwoman has reviewed the proposal and feels that since we have a $4 billion build out across the street in order for the convention center, and I believe this is the original portion of it, built 37 years ago, not to look like the dowager aunt that couldn't get a date, we need to do something to make that facility more engaging, a more seamless transition for people who are visiting both, and sees this as an excellent way to do it.
I don't know why we always have to talk about women not getting dates, but thank you very much.
Good morning.
Arnold
Thank you.
Sachs.
Yeah, I have a few questions.
I take it
Especially
personal.
since we have a problem in the city of LA with illegal billboard erected by companies. Will they be eligible to put signage on the convention center if they're in the process of litigation involved with illegal billboards? They're getting rewarded and not solving their other problems. Digital billboards, size of the billboards. There was somebody who wanted to come before the city council and put a huge digital billboard on the corner of, Olympic and Figueroa. I don't know where that is. And didn't Councilwoman Perry's office legislate the billboard trade-off for the park in South Central for the large billboards along Santa Monica Boulevard? And then I also wanted to point out here, for the record, the paperwork that was put together, the signage and advertising agreement lists the LA Arena Land Company Incorporated and the City of Los Angeles. Further down, the city, the land company, and the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Los Angeles, which seems to be redundant. And anything the Community Redevelopment Agency gets involved in or is involved in always leaves a bad taste in the public's mouth. So I would definitely look for somebody to explain or keep a watchdog an eye on this, just exactly where the revenue goes. You may want it to go for the arts, but if the Community Redevelopment Agency is involved in it, it's their arts, not the public's arts. Thank you for your time, your answers, and your attention.
Thank you.
Last thing, I don't know if anyone travels east on Interstate 5, Santa Ana Freeway, the old tire company, which is now,
Small.
what's the call? I know, there's got a Citadel. They put advertising on the peaks of their, I don't know the LA Conservancy passed on it, but they did. Anyway, when I saw that the other day, I thought of you, and I said, what are we going to do, not knowing this is going to be in committee. And so drive by and look at that and tell me what you think of it. Thanks.
Okay, with that, I would like to, is there a motion to approve the recommendations of the CLA and our Convention Center General Manager to move forward with this?
Yes, with a friendly motion coming.
Okay.
For- to come up with-
It's been moved. Do we have a
Question.
second?
Can I have a
Second
friendly
with
motion
timeframe
that,
to be understood better.
and a friendly motion that we come up with a percentage of the income in 2010? I'll give you an extra year.
Fine.
Be defined for the arts.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
would this be approval with amendment to include the finding that
Yes,
we
yes.
discussed?
Well, my
Yes.
friendly amendment too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, all of that.
Okay.
All in favor?
As
Aye.
long as the friendly amendment ends up in Budget Committee for us to discuss.
I trust Ms. Hahn.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, that item is approved. Thank you. This has no name.
Good point. I think it's Mr. Sachs.
Well,
So be it.
how do we know? Okay, let's go on to item 2.
Under item 2, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits for council approval.
You know what, I would like to continue item 2 to our next meeting, if that's,
I'll second that.
thank you. Any objections?
No.
Okay, item 3.
Item 3, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits for council approval a permanent order and accompanying ordinance to amend the Port of Los Angeles Tariff Number 4, Section 20, Item 2045, by adding provisions for financial incentives to increase compliance with the Voluntary Vessel Speed Reduction Program. And the CAO has submitted a report and recommendation for approval of this tariff amendment.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilwoman. Catherine McDermott, Deputy Executive Director of the Port of Los Angeles, and Eric Karras, Marketing Manager.
Would you like to just give us a brief overview of what it is that we'd be approving today?
This item will further implement the Clean Air Action Plan by providing a monetary, two things. Number one, providing a monetary incentive to vessel companies whose vessels comply with our voluntary speed reduction program in the form of a refund of some tariff paid. The second item is that for individual vessels meeting 100% compliance with the vessel speed reduction, will have a recognition in the form of a flag. So this is really to help keep us competitive while we implement the Clean Air Action Plan.
And how is this different from the recent incentive for low sulfur fuel?
What we call that OGV4, Ocean Going Vessel 4, but that program refunds or provides a grant for the incremental difference between using low sulfur fuel and the regular fuel that they would use. But it relies on the companies complying with the vessel speed reduction program. So this is one further monetary incentive to help make sure that the industry wants to comply. And just as a side note, we were at about 85% compliance with the vessel speed reduction without this incentive program. Since this went to our board, we're overall year-to-date at 90%, and actually for July, we're at 93%.
So we're already at 93%.
Based on the fact that the industry knows that this program is going forward finally.
And what can we tell the public? What does it mean to the public inland and certainly close to the port for ships to reduce their speed when they're coming into our harbor?
If all of the ships complied with this program, the emissions would be reduced by about 360 tons of pollution each year. So this is a program that has a direct impact on mitigating the impacts of trade.
And do we see the day coming when it will be mandatory?
We'll look to, we can't regulate, as we well know.
Right.
So we will look to the regulatory agencies to regulate. We see this program, this incentive and recognition program, going on until that time. Most likely, the board will have to decide, as will the council, but we need to help incent the...
And how long will our program be in place?
It's a yearly program, but it's effectively indefinite.
Indefinite.
Until the Board of Harbor Commissioners decide to pull the program for whatever reason.
One of the things that I learned new when we were discussing cruise ships recently was that cruise ships are a little bit different than cargo vessels, and they were actually making the case that a certain speed was actually counterproductive to fuel efficiency. How are we dealing with the cruise ships on this program?
We actually have given 2 of the cruise lines exemptions and allowed them to come in at a different speed. The 12 knots is really based on cargo ships, which have totally different types of engines than cruise ships. So we actually gave exemptions to 2 companies who have provided data to show us that they can maintain lower emissions, but using a different speed because of the difference in the engine.
So if they come in with data and prove to you that a certain speed actually is better for fuel efficiency, you'll work with them on that.
If there's that combination of fuel efficiency but maintaining the reduction in emissions, yes.
And then how do you monitor this?
Actually, the speeds are monitored by determining specific points along the route, whether it's 40 or 20 miles out, and then determining the time in between and coming up with an overall speed. And so we do this through IT programs that we have and that the Marine Exchange enforces or actually monitors for us.
And if one time they're good and the next time they're not good, do we take their flag away? Or?
Well, the flags will be given out annually, and those are for individual vessels. So one year they may get one, and one year if they're not at 100%, they won't. The monetary incentive actually goes to a fleet. So say you have Maersk or China Shipping, they have to maintain 90% compliance for their entire fleet of vessels that comes in.
Okay, good. Any questions?
I think it's great.
Yeah. Mr. LaBlanche?
I'm happy if you're happy.
I'm happy. Do I have a recommendation to approve this?
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Item 4.
Item 4.
Under item 4, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits for approval the second amendment to an agreement with the law firm of Stanzler, Funderburk, and Castellan, which is a contract for outside counsel services to assist in the prosecution of the city's claims for environmental remediation and rent of the former LA Marine Terminal at berths 171 to 173. The proposed amendment would extend the contract term by 1 year, increasing the term from 3 years to 4 years, and it would expire on August 31, 2009. The CAO has submitted a report and recommendation for approval of the amendment.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ken Matfield from the City Attorney's Office.
Yes, would you like to tell us anything about this?
The contract extension was required simply because this matters before Judge Cheney, and she won't let us try the case until the Regional Water Quality Control Board makes a firm decision on what the cleanup standards for this property will be.
And when do we expect that?
I'm on my way there this morning at 10 to try and get some clarity.
Okay.
This is a negotiation that's been going on for 2 years, and it's hard to believe. that we
Okay,
can't
and then the trial will begin after?
It was originally set for May of this year, then it was continued to September. It's now set for March of '09, and we're hanging on as best we can to hold that date.
And do you have any sense of how long it will take to remediate this land?
It would be quick if we did a complete
Really?
dig and haul, and that's part of the debate that's going on before the water board. There's alternative remedial actions. You can do bug farming, you can do things like that, but the property is actually oozing oil into the shipping channel, and we're in front of the water board arguing that this needs to be cleaned up quickly and effectively, and so I'm just looking for a firm decision from them.
Okay, any questions, gentlemen?
I'm happy if you're happy.
Okay.
So moved.
So moved. Get on your way, and hopefully we can bring
tell
this
the
to
judge I filled
closure
out.
so that we can begin remediating that land and give it back for other uses, hopefully for the public.
Thank you.
Sorry, Arnold Sachs. Item 4, I see that.
It's good morning again, Arnold Sachs. Another one of my favorite topics, outside counsel for the city of Los Angeles. If, as the gentleman just explained, that the property is oozing oil, why would you have to have outside counsel to argue that fact when the fact is self-evident? Number one. Number two, the terms of the increase from 700 million to, or 700,000 to 1.1 million, a little over that, cover preparations for the trial. But the paperwork that was involved state that that doesn't include the trial costs. So what would be the recovery fee for the outside counsel if the city wins this trial as so expressed? Is that a percentage, or is that hourly rate, or is what's the fees the city going to pay on top of trial preparation for trial costs? Again, thank you for your time, your interest, and your attention.
Thank you.
Excuse me. That goes for number 5 too.
Thank you. Number 5.
Under item 5, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits for approval the second amendment to an agreement with the law firm of Meyer Brown, which is a contract for legal representation in the ongoing case of the United States ex rel. Stanley Mosler versus City and Port and others. The proposed amendment would extend the contract term from 2 years to 4 years to expire on July 17th, 2010. Again, the CAO is recommending approval of the contract extension.
Okay, another outside counsel for Stanley Mosler.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Chris Bobo, Assistant City Attorney, for appearing before you today. This is
Just remind us, Chris, what this complaint filed against.
This complaint alleges that the port and the city defrauded the federal government out of the funds needed for the dredging of the Pier 400 project. The federal contribution was approximately $108 million. The case has been pending since March 2002. It had been dismissed by the trial court. The plaintiff relator, Stanley Mosler, filed an appeal to the Ninth Circuit. The case has been pending in the Ninth Circuit since it was dismissed. Recently, the trial judge has indicated that he would vacate his original dismissal, feeling that the grounds that he dismissed it originally were inadequate. So we continue to need the services of outside counsel to defend the city in the action.
Any chance for settlement?
As you know, Mr. Mosler has insisted upon a sizable monetary settlement in the range of $324 million. We don't believe the case has any merit. We moved to dismiss the case at the trial court. We sought summary judgment, and we continue to believe the case has no merit.
So you're going for broke, so to speak.
Well, I wouldn't say that. Perhaps in closed session we could discuss settlement possibilities with this committee, but that wouldn't be appropriate in an open session discussion.
Okay. Maybe we schedule this, not necessarily today, but for a closed session, maybe not next time, to get a better briefing and update on this. Because this is a case that I think it's very, very important. I think it's very significant.
Well, that certainly would be appropriate to brief this body in closed session on it. If I could ask that we separate that from the contract extension so that we could continue the defense, we can agendize the item separately for a closed session discussion.
I would be in favor of that.
Good. So moved.
Okay, so moved. All right. Well, can we agendize it for maybe next time?
And you're approving this item today?
We are.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Item 6, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits for approval the First Amendment to a lease from Pacific Place Associates. This is for office space at 222 West 6th Street in San Pedro, which is being occupied by the Harbor Department's Environmental Management Division. The proposed amendment would authorize an increase in the monthly rent for 24-hour air conditioning for the computer server room, as well as for recycling services, and would authorize payment of one-time costs for tenant improvements. CAO has recommended approval of the lease amendment.
This item has to do...
Identify yourself for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Catherine McDermott, Port of Los Angeles. This item has to do with some changes that occurred contractually with Pacific Place after we moved in and after the lease was approved by the board and the council. So we are just making this one-time payment that had to do with additional tenant improvements as well as changing the
So you still need space for port staff outside of the Port Administration Building?
Yes, and actually, we're looking at trying to do some rehabilitation of our building, and we may actually look at some additional space to affect that. So we're not
In
looking...
this particular
No.
Pacific Place?
No. Oh, yes, we may look at Pacific Place, not in this document, not in this item. but
Are you
yes.
looking at overall plans for a larger administration building?
I think we have deferred looking right now at acting on it. We're looking at it, but what we're really focused on is the next 5 years or so when we're not so much growing, but we are so constrained physically in that building. It's more how can we put our employees in a more hospitable environment.
How many employees overall do we have at the port?
About 900, I believe, plus or minus.
How many in the administration building?
In the Harbor Administration Building, probably about 400 plus.
Do you know who the architect of that building was?
No, I don't.
John Warnke.
Oh, really?
And he designed President Kennedy's memorial at Arlington.
I didn't know.
And also the Civic Center in Honolulu. And a great guy. Played for Pop Warner at Stanford in 1939. Still living.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
Actually, this is accommodating about 50 people. Two of our divisions are environmental group, which is probably about 35 people, and Homeland Security.
Great, and I heard that your environmental group has taken that mantle seriously about recycling.
Yes, they have, and actually this was part of it. The landlord would not provide the service to segregate and recycle, and so the additional $125 a month reflects our commitment, even though the landlord wouldn't provide it without additional payment.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. It's
Thank
the right
you.
thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. A motion to approve this? Yes, second? Yes.
Thank
So
you very
moved.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7,
All right.
finally.
Item 7 is
Lucky number 7.
Item 7 is continued consideration of motion Han Weezer introduced on July 25th, 2008, proposing that council ask the city attorney to report with recommendations on how to implement a program to reduce turnover and ensure training for airline contracted passenger service workers in order to improve service quality, safety, and security at LAX. At this committee's last meeting on August 6th, LAWA's executive director reported that the department had hired a consultant to build on the work already accomplished by the department to develop a certification program for the hiring of airline contracted passenger service workers. The department's effort was in response to an earlier motion by Han Weezer introduced in July 2007.
Thank you. Well, colleagues, since we last heard this in committee, there has been some work interruption with the strike authorized last week at LAX by these workers. And I really believe that it is in the city's interest to ensure that the airport runs smoothly with minimal labor disruptions. I wanted to bring back this item now and sort of revise our recommendations and maybe give a little more direction to our city attorney on what exactly it is that we're looking for. I think there's a sense of urgency here. It's my understanding that there has been a cooling off period for both sides, and then they'll go back to the table. But I think it's important, and that's why I wanted to hear this today in our committee. I think it's important that we take another look at some of the reasons that these workers felt that they needed to go on strike. I am very, very concerned with the stability of the workforce. In these particular service workers at the airport, I understand there's a 50% turnover rate, and that troubles me for a lot of reasons. And these are the workers that perform critical functions. These are security officers, skycaps, baggage handlers, cabin cleaners, wheelchair assistant workers, cargo crews, and other classifications. And, everyone is concerned about the economy. Everyone's concerned about the airline industry. But we know that since 2001, the airlines have received an estimated $8.5 billion in federal subsidies and $487 million in state and local subsidies in California. And we in the city of Los Angeles are gearing up for a major investment of up to $8 billion in modernizing LAX. We just want to make sure, as we move forward, making this a world-class airport facility with new terminals and new concessions and modernizing this to be a great experience for the airlines as well as for passengers, that we don't forget that the men and women who make this airport work on a daily basis are right now struggling to ensure that they have decent benefits. Particularly, I know health care is a big issue, and I have a problem if a lot of these workers are on the front lines since 9/11 of making sure that the airport is safe, making sure that the aircraft is safe, making sure that when they check boarding passes and licenses that that all is well. I have a problem when we're not providing the kind of work that will keep these workers at the airport. And when we have 50% turnover, that bothers me in terms of security at the airport. I want this workforce to be stable. I want this workforce to have the kind of pay and benefits that will keep them at the airport. I want them to be well trained, well qualified, and paid decent wages and good benefits so that they stay there, so that we know every single day we've got the same workers who have been trained, making sure that that airport is safe for passengers going in and out. So I wanted to bring it back, and we have some recommendations we want to make later on, but I wanted to start, colleagues, with listening with public comment to hear from many of these workers on really what's the problem. Well, what's the problem out there, and what brought you to the point that you actually would be willing to disrupt, work at Los Angeles International Airport? So let's hear from Carolyn Briones, Guadalupe Valencia, and Jorge Herrera. Let's start with those three. We only have three.
Very good.
And then Arnold Sachs.
Good morning. My name is Carolina Brianis. I'm the Research Director at LA Alliance for a New Economy. And I want to really focus in today on the issue of healthcare and talk about some specific reasons why we think this is a really good place to start when we're thinking about raising standards for airport workers. As we know, the standard that applies to this group of workers and a lot of airport workers is the Living Wage Ordinance, and that has a two-tier wage structure. And the original intent of that structure really was to encourage employers to provide health care benefits. And in 2005, we worked with two University of California economists to really do a comprehensive evaluation of what the impact of the Living Wage Ordinance has been. And we did this study here that I brought. And one of our key findings from that study was that the $1.25 differential, that's how much the difference is between the two wage tiers, and that's the amount that can be applied towards health care, really was not sufficient to encourage employers to start providing health care benefits. So in that sense, really hadn't had the impact that was hoped for. The reason is that it's also that amount has been the same since 1997, hasn't changed, without even being adjusted for inflation, and it really doesn't have any relation to what the actual costs for employers to provide health care is. And so, what we've seen as a result of this is there's some major groups of covered workers that just are not getting health benefits, in some cases not at all. And I think the airline service workers are an excellent example of this, where we surveyed and found people don't even get individual health care, let alone family benefits. And that's different from some other companies at LAX that are providing affordable family health benefits. That includes food, retail concessionaires, parking companies. Those are companies we see that have more of a direct relationship with the city, a direct financial relationship, and maybe the city has a little more influence to get those standards up, in contrast to the airline service folks where there's an intermediary of the airlines and there's not as close direct a relationship.
What's the difference?
Sorry?
What's the difference in money that they provide?
Well, a lot of those companies that I mentioned are providing free full family benefits to folks. So they're covering the workers and their kids, and at little or no cost to the workers themselves.
And how much does it cost for the business to do that?
I could get those figures. I don't.
If it's
Yeah,
a quarter
I
was
could get
together,
those.
I'd like to know
Yeah,
how much they're really putting
yeah.
into the picture.
Yeah, well, there have been surveys done. There's actually a foundation that surveys the cost of employer-provided health care every year, and for last year it was about $5 an hour for a full-time worker for family health benefits. But the costs really vary depending on specifics of the
Right.
groups. So there's, So just a couple quick points as far
Okay.
as, if that's okay, what we would recommend is really updating the amount of that healthcare differential in the living wage so that it really reflects the current cost of healthcare. And we also recommend indexing it annually, very similar to the way the wage is already indexed. This is an issue overall with the ordinance, but we think there's a few reasons why starting at LAX really makes a lot of sense. As you mentioned, the investment in modernization, we think it's important to raise standards to get the full benefit of that investment. And also we all know about the high security needs at the airport and the need for a stable and trained workforce. So, and also if we start somewhere, that would allow the city to really assess the impact and study and see whether it's something that should be extended more broadly. So, thanks.
Thank you. You want to go ahead?
Hi, my name is Guadalupe Valencia. I've been a worker at the airport since '97. I just wrote down something briefly.
Okay.
My name is Lupe Valencia. I'm a wheelchair dispatcher for AirServe, United Subcontractor. All day, I help people with disabilities and elderly people who are too old or too sick to move themselves, and yet I have no health insurance. Thank God my 3 kids are covered by Medi-Cal, but I just try not to get sick myself because it's hard for me to pay. A while back, I had heart palpitations, and my bill from the ambulance. At the end of the day, I had a bill from the ambulance, $900 from the ambulance, and $1,200 from the hospital that they took me to. And my income is $1,400. That's my income that I bring. And I've been at the airport since the original fight to have the living wage back. A lot of people that we know, they stick because we had good pay. They sticked around, but this is bad now for the airport, for the passengers, because you have a lot of new people running around who try hard but just don't have experience to look out for the passenger safety and security.
Thank you, Guadalupe.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Jorge Herrera. I'm a security guard at LAX, Tom Bradley International. My coworkers and I do different jobs to protect passengers. We search planes for weapons, bombs, or any suspicious thing that can harm any passenger. We guard doors of the planes, make sure nobody with not authorization goes in it. It is a heavy responsibility for us. I think more responsibility than TSA has right now. Most of the training that we had is not enough. We have to train our own coworkers to do the job. We've been telling a year ago that someone will do it, and we're still doing it ourselves, training our coworkers. And sometimes we not really know what they're doing. We're doing our part, but the persons that we train, we're not sure if they're doing the right thing or they're not. Right now, I think that the companies and the airlines, they are doing whatever they want to do. Besides, the only thing they want to do is to the airplane arrives and departure as fast as they can. But what about the security? There is a lot of procedures broken from the airline and from the companies, and it worries me. It worries me a lot. One of the reasons that the people leave is because they have a part-time as a security guard. There is only 4 hours or 6 hours as security guards, and we need benefits to stay at the work, and we don't have nothing. It's pretty hard for my coworkers to stay at least 1 year. I've been seeing people coming and going. I'm one of the lucky ones at the airport because I have 4 kids and they are covered by medical. And my wife works at the airport too, and she's covered by her insurance, and the insurance covers me. So I'm pretty lucky that my wife is working with a company that covers her. Lots of my coworkers quit when they realize that people just aren't very good. Right now I stopped going to school because I'm doing this. I'm trying to do something that changes LAX in a good manner, and I think you have a good heart and a good brain to do better changes at the airport because we need it. We need it badly. We want good jobs. We want health insurance at the airport, so people stay longer.
Right.
People stay longer, so they have more. We want people to have better experience as what they're doing, and I think that's all I can say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming and testifying. We appreciate that.
Madam Chair, before she leaves. Okay, before you leave, I'd like to ask you, the research director, you said in your final comments that you want to bring it up and then you want to index it. Index it obviously makes sense about everything. But when you say bring it up, are you alluding to the $5 that the other businesses do from the $1.50? Or what do you really want?
I think family health care is going to really go a long way to having people stay in these jobs.
Okay, family health care would be how much a worker?
One really good number that they're, it's Kaiser Family Foundation. They're very reputable, and they do the annual survey. It's $5 an hour.
I see. Okay.
So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. One more.
That's a question.
Yes. We're going to have
training. When you mentioned about training there, in some parts of the city, and forgive me, Mr. President, not to be intimate. I know in the West Valley they have an occupation center. Mid Valley they have an occupation center. East LA, is there a West Los Angeles occupation center?
Yes.
Where is it?
It's in Venice.
And what's its name?
I don't know.
Okay. Is there any opportunity
I've
to
been there for graduation.
LA Unified School District Occupation Center? Is there any relationship we could get going there?
Well, I think that's
talk
what
about training.
I agree, and I think that's what we're going to get back because our original motion, Tom, asked for talking about increased wages, benefits, as well as training requirements similar to those used at San Francisco International Airport. So our original motion asked the city attorney to come back with recommendations on how to implement a program to ensure training. So we'll hear back on those recommendations.
And by the way, where does most people have to commute from to work at the airport? Where do you live?
Los Angeles.
I know what part. Central LA?
No, mid-city.
Mid-city?
South Central.
South Central, so you come...
Yeah, and when we did our survey, we found...
by the sports arena, sports arena.
That's exactly what we asked for was better training. Okay.
It could not maybe just be at the Venice training. It could be at Central City training.
Right. We'll get that. Let's have one more. Let's have colleagues. Let's have one more spokesperson, and then we'll get into the real report. Arnold.
Right.
We're going to get to all that. Don't jump the gun, so to speak.
Yes. Good morning again, Arnold Sachs. Actually, it's your actions with the living wage that put the people in the position that they're in. Because if you're a business person, and you heard testimony, the differential between wage with and without benefits is $1.25. So if you're a business owner, you're spending for 40 hours, $50 a person. Now, you heard somebody testify that they had to go to the hospital for heart palpitations, over $2,000. That's the same as 40 employees, $50 an hour. So would you rather pay the $1.25 an hour and cut the health benefits, or would you rather pay the less amount of money and get stuck with, who knows, two, three visits to the hospital by your staff? That's $6,000. So your own workmanship by integrating this living wage law is as big a reason as any is why these people are behind the 8 ball. Now, you're going to go and say $5 an hour increase to cover cost of health benefits. How many businesses do you think are going to say, okay, $5 an hour? Sure. Plus, there was a program intact, I'm sure, at one time where the employees that are here or had the jobs previously actually worked for the airlines. Now, when it was subcontracted out, and the relationship between the employees and the airlines changed because we got a third party involved, that's when you should have stepped up, but you allowed it to go through. So a lot of the problems that are faced right now are just as much part of the city's government being in bed with big business as it is common sense. Again, thank you for your time, your interest, and your attention.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite up the CAO and if the city attorney's here, Tom and Teresa. Okay, one of the things clearly there's two issues here. We wanted to come back with recommendations on how we implement a better training with the contractors who are involved in hiring these service workers. But the other thing that is come out is the idea of healthcare and this $1.25 in our living wage. And just so everybody understands it, our living wage says that you pay one amount if you provide health benefits, and then you provide another amount, which is plus $1.25, if you do not offer health benefits. The thinking being that $1.25 extra will allow workers to purchase their own health care. But what we've seen over the last 10 years since the living wage ordinance has been implemented, that $1.25 has never changed. It's never really been indexed. It's never really been evaluated whether or not that's livable for anybody. So that's one of the issues that's coming up today. So I was going to ask the CAO, I think that's one of the recommendations that we obviously would like to see is an evaluation of the $1.25 that's allotted for health care in our living wage ordinance, and whether or not, that is sufficient as we move forward.
Okay. We can certainly look at that.
Name, Tom? Your name?
Tom Coltis from the CAO's office. CAO's office can certainly look at that issue. $1.25 set in 1997 that hasn't changed. When you look at the cost of health care as it's gone up in the United States, obviously that's probably not tenable at this point in time. As a point of reference, since 2001, the city's health care costs have doubled. So clearly, it's out of proportion. Living wage itself has increased by 37% over that period of time.
Right, but the health care cost has never changed, right? So, I understand that under our enhancement zone, which is the Century Boulevard corridor, that CAO is supposed to be doing an evaluation of the health care portion of the living wage ordinance. Is this a good way to kind of couple both of these together?
Yeah, the
as you're looking at
hospitality zone ordinance has a two-part study to it, which is, one is the impact of living wage itself on employment, but also there's the collateral piece of healthcare. The healthcare piece looks relatively straightforward. The living wage one looks like a very complicated study at the moment. We can certainly link these two up. The city has a healthcare consultant that we utilize who's much more familiar with the healthcare industry than we are, especially on the private sector side, because there is significant difference in the rates that are available depending upon the composition of the workforce.
Now, let me just ask you a question about the basic living wage piece that is indexed and has gone up. What was the thinking when we first did this as a city? It was before my time. And why we did not index the healthcare portion. What's the history there?
It's not before my time, but it is before my time looking at the living wage ordinance, so I'd have to go back and research that issue.
I'm curious why we didn't do that. Teresa, City Attorney.
Well, the good news is that amending this ordinance to now index health benefits and adjust the numbers is very straightforward. And
so when if the CAO comes back with an evaluation and a recommendation that maybe it's time that we in the city look to increase the health care portion of our living wage ordinance, City Attorney ready to come back and with that ordinance?
yes, and very quickly. It's a very straightforward, simple ordinance to do so.
Where are we on the piece about the training with this with the contractors?
Are you talking about the airport's piece?
Yeah.
My understanding, just getting an update from airport staff, is since your last committee meeting that the consultant has been brought on board, and that they, and I'll let them, maybe they want to speak from themselves. Actually, Tamami Yamaguchi is with the city attorney's office. I don't know if you'd rather hear from airport staff
Molina.
directly on the consultant issue. I don't know.
Do we have somebody from the
Mike
airport that would like to comment? There's a familiar face around City Hall.
I don't know.
Molina.
What's the time frame here?
Mike Molina.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mike Molina, Law External Affairs. As Ms. Stamos just reported at the previous commission meeting held in August, the Board of Airport Commissioners did approve a contract for a consultant who is going to look at the current services standards policy that the BOAC has approved and put together an implementation plan of identifying those areas that the airport will now pre-qualify towards certification certain contractors who will then be allowed to work at the airport. That certification plan will include issues like training, issues like appropriate equipment. No longer will we have faulty wheelchairs. Issues like experience in the job, issues like their relationship with their employees. We'll look at all those different aspects because basically what LAWA wants is we don't want bad contractors working at the airport. So we want to establish some kind of a criteria that contractors will be pre-certified, and then the airlines will choose from the approved list which contractors they can use.
What about current contractors and the stories that we keep hearing, which are very troubling to me? That, you know, we're sending people on the planes to look for suspicious items, and it sounds like the kind of training that I'd like to see happening is not happening. They're kind of training each other, and there's no overall standard for how you search a plane for suspicious items. What about currently? And I like the fact that in the future, the next time around, before we give work to contractors, but what about currently? What can we do?
Currently, there's really nothing that the airport can do except to insist upon the contractors and their airlines that the airport expects a higher level of quality among the work that's being performed. And I know it's always hard to talk about in the future, but we're really seeing that the work of this contractor should be finished by the end of the year. No current contractor will be grandfathered.
Okay.
Everyone will have to apply.
Reapply by the end of the year.
For the certification. Our goal is to have the program in place by the end.
But when is it time to renew these contractors? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, are they all up for renewal in January of 2009?
The contractors would be through the airlines, and this would be a new program for the airport
to
certify, and we're hoping that that begins by the end of the year.
But we don't know when the airlines are going back out for
Their specific bids?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
If I could just follow up on that, would we have 250 contractors? Is that the figure?
Roughly. I mean, it depends. We hear a variety of different numbers, and there's no secret that the goal of the airport is to reduce the amount of contractors that are currently working at the airport. Sometimes you drive on the airfield, and it looks like the 405 freeway. There are so many
So
contractors
when the
back there.
consultant finishes the report, then they will be obligated, the airlines, to certify them according to what the commission will suggest?
Yes, the airport will certify the contractors, and then the airlines will choose from a list of pre-certified contractors.
And in that certified group, Madam Chair, if we ask this, are we looking at a uptick in healthcare monies? We've heard a figure here of $5 versus the buck. Are there going to be specifics in there, economic specifics, that say you have to meet this bar, this standard before you can be certified?
The standard would be the living wage ordinance currently in place in the state.
Right.
So we
So
change that.
it's up to us as the legislative policy body in the city of Los Angeles to look at whether or not it's time to up the living wage ordinance, particularly as it relates to the healthcare. Then everyone who does business in LA would have to subscribe to that.
Not everyone who does business,
But I mean, everyone who has a contract.
What has San Francisco done or other places in terms of certification? And
San Francisco has adopted. Ms. Stamos, you want to talk about?
San Francisco?
Well, I probably know as much as you, or you probably know much more than me. But San Francisco's adopted a quality service program, which I think is certainly one of the examples that's being looked at, and correct? So-
Correct. The Quality Services Program in San Francisco has been in existence for about 8 years and actually predated San Francisco's living wage ordinance, as I understand. So it was the first agency within the city to implement some kind of a package. The program was put together primarily to ensure that the contractors were employing employees who had, first and foremost, safety and security in mind.
Right.
So there was an element of security training, et cetera.
Right.
They do have, as I understand, some kind of an index built into their program so that on a regular basis those minimum numbers are explored and
Okay.
adjusted according to index.
Are they looking at Atlanta and LA and JFK and some of the other, Chicago, Dallas as well?
Our consultant is, yes.
They're going to look at a bunch of airports, see how other people are doing it, and then come back
Correct.
and report on that. So you would appreciate if the city council took some action by the end of the year of some sort to help define what this would be.
I don't know if appreciate is a proper word, but
I think the people behind me would appreciate it more than me, but yes, I mean, certainly any kind of work that would be in connection with the policy that we're implementing, certainly your work would be helpful.
Can we get a report back from that consultant somewhere
Absolutely.
during this process so that we're on the same?
that's going to be one of our recommendations. Okay.
Michael, you have the CERT program at the fire department you're familiar with?
Yes.
You know, just, is any of that transcended into, and you get any training from the city of Los Angeles? Does the fire department train any of these workers in any way? Does the airport department train any of these workers on procedures working in a city building? Or do you know the answer to the question?
I don't know the answer.
Okay, so that would be something that I would look to right away. Also, I think there should be postings of educational opportunities in occupation centers throughout, or whether it's community colleges, and look at that area there. And also, if you look up to San Francisco, I think maybe Ms. Hine, you could take a delegation up there. I know you've done that before, just to see what could be matched in some sense to try to enhance the opportunity for people
Right.
in this area.
That's a great idea.
Right,
I
thank
don't want
you.
to be late for council.
Thank you. I don't either. So what I'd like, based on what Councilmember Rosendahl said, let's get an update from LAWA once your consultant has completed the certification program, and you're saying it's before the end of the year. So we'd like you to notify us as soon as that's done, and we'll agendize that. And then a report back from the CAO on your analysis, particularly of the health care portion of our living wage ordinance and whether or not it's time for us to revise that. And we want to make sure that you include in your analysis, the data from the Lane report, as well as we'd certainly like for you to look at the San Francisco International Airport's Quality Standards Program. And that is for all their companies that employ workers with security and safety-related duties, which certainly these workers would qualify for that, and look at their training and evaluation standards and adequate compensation. We'd like you just to include that. And then we know the city attorney will be ready and waiting to give us back an ordinance if we think that's the time. I will tell you, again, I know it's tough times for the airline industry. I know the fuel costs have been causing our airlines to cut back on flights, which is obviously devastating. But again, if the airlines are having tough times with fuel costs, you know that the average person living in Los Angeles is also having tough times with fuel costs. And again, for me, it's important that we treat this workforce with dignity and respect and reduce the number of turnovers because these people really are on the front line of security and safety issues as it relates to the millions of passengers that come through LAX on a regular basis. We want this to be a first-class airport, not just in the way the terminals look, but really more importantly in how our workers are able to service the passengers that come through here ultimately, and that services the airline industry. So we want everybody to work together. We hope both sides will come together after cooling off period and come up with real solutions. But we in the city of Los Angeles have an obligation as well to look at legislation that can improve the quality of life for the people who work in our city and at our airport.
If I could make one other editorial statement.
Go ahead.
Frankly, I think this is a national issue about health care. I think the real elephant in the room is a national policy on health care. A lot of corporations and businesses have stopped providing health care because they can't afford it. They can't make their businesses work. So it's time there was national leadership, and I hope with the change of administration, we'll get a president in there that will begin to look at health care as a right for all of its citizens. We have 47 million without health care to begin with, and everybody else has crummy health care. And it's time that we bit the bullet, stop blaming the corporate world on it. It isn't the airline's fault that we're in this mess. It's because we don't have a good social contract on a national level. And some airlines will go under if they're forced into this, just like some private sector businesses have gone under because they can't afford health care. Look at different groups who have gotten rid of health care because they can't do it. So it's a bigger issue than just the airlines and us here in this city. And I hope we have new leadership in Washington that will truly begin to focus on health care as a right for all of its citizens. So it's an editorial statement.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So we'll approve these recommendations.
And
so moved. And I have no
Madam
other.
Chair,
Yes.
would you also like to receive and file your original motion asking LAWA to report? They submitted a report which could be received and filed. No?
What report?
This is on our original motion?
Yes.
No, I don't want to receive and file that.
Okay.
Let's keep that alive.
All right.
Okay.
Because you've asked us to come back.
Right, exactly.
Consultants
Right.
ready.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I don't want to receive and file it yet. Okay, thank you. And thank you all for, I know it's a big deal to come down here. We appreciate you coming down here. Thank you very much.
Do you have a speaker's card for general comment?
For what?
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't.
No, remember? It's like no name.
Meeting adjourned.
I know. Meeting adjourned.
Always a pleasure.
I didn't have another card from you.
Have a public comment?
Nope. You didn't.
Name.
Oh. Name on it. How did I know?
How are you, Brittany? What's going on? Not a problem. Yeah, I know.
I'll save it for the public.
He's got a pretty good idea. Kind of diluted.
No, I